Good morning and welcome to Peace Out Take Two. We're going to try again. I keep having the same problems. One time I had to just completely get off the Wi-Fi for some reason. It's kind of weird. I don't know. I don't know. But we're going to peace out anyway, right? Thank God that we don't have to worry about too many things. I have a good question for you today. Here's our question. We're going to spend this week. I don't know. I'm studying several things right now. I just had a blast this weekend getting this. I took some time to just really study 2 or 3 different things, preparing for 2 or 3 different things that I got upcoming. And starting today, I'm busy the next 2 weeks. It's really a lot of fun. It's so amazing that God is opening up opportunities here. And so I'm excited about it. Anyway, but we're probably going to spend this week in about 3 chapters in Exodus, looking at the Exodus from Egypt. So my question for us, because I'm asking myself this question too, is am I at peace? Do I have peace? Or am I just comfortable? Because see, we got the children of Israel. God did so many cool things for them. Just like, look back over your life. You know, there's things that God did that you just can't explain any other way, right? We all have stories of where God stepped in and brought us out of our Egypt situation, out of something that had us in bondage, something that had us tied down, something that had us all in the molly grubs, or something like we have all these stories. Maybe he got you out of a bad situation at work. Maybe he gave you the right words in a certain specific situation or something. We all have these big things in our lives, an Egypt experience where God comes in and gets us out, right? We've got that. We understand that. But then when he got them out of Egypt, and they were for it, the children of Israel were all for it, right? They were all right, let's go. They did everything Moses said. They endured the 10 plagues with their eye on freedom and walking out of slavery, right? And so they were all in, and they did just what Moses said. Moses said, go ask them to borrow jewelry and all their fancy stuff. They literally plundered them like an army, is what it says in Exodus. They plundered them like an army, and yet, and then they go out. But here was the problem. Every time something difficult came up, they wanted to go back. Why would they want to go back? It was a horrible life to live in bondage, and they were making it harder on them, and they killed their babies. They were treated horribly in Egypt. But every time something didn't go just like they wanted it to go, they would say, we should have stayed in Egypt. As a matter of fact, let me see what chapter it is. See, I got my little Bible. I even worked in my Bible study journal this week. This is where I put some of my Bible studies, just general ones. Anyway, in chapter 13, verses 17 and 18, it says that God did not take them the short route. He could have taken them the short way to Egypt, or to Canaan, from Egypt to Canaan, to the promised land. But it says he knew if they had to battle the Philistines, they would choose to go back to Egypt. So he didn't take them the short way from the get-go because he knew they would want to go back. Go back. Why would they want to go back when they had all of this in front of them? Well, if you think about it, they had never had a battle. They were not trained for war. They had a slave mentality. They had been mistreated. They had all grown up in slavery. They didn't know anything else. And they were comfortable with that because at least they knew what to expect. And so even from the get-go, God said, I'm not taking them this way. We're going to go the long way around, because if they go the short way and they run into a battle, they run into some adversity, they're going to want to go back. So he took them the long way to begin with. But then we find that every time that something came up, they come to the Red Sea. We should have stayed in Egypt. At least we could have died and been buried there. We could, then later they're asking, we could have onions and leeks, and now we've got nothing. We've got manna. We want meat. They always wanted something from Egypt while God was setting them free. They were comfortable being a slave. And that's a really sad thing, right? They were comfortable there. They knew exactly what to expect. They knew they were going to be beaten. They knew they were going to be mistreated. They knew they were going to be dragged out of their homes. They knew all of that. but they were comfortable with it. So they made themselves be at peace with it because they were comfortable with it. And then every time they got uncomfortable on the journey God was taking them on, they were like, can't we just go back to Egypt where we knew what to expect? It was horrible, but at least we knew what to expect. They didn't know what to expect. They didn't even know how to enjoy a victory when the army was washed away in the Red Sea. They didn't even know because they had never won. They had never won. They had never tasted freedom. They had never had to work outside for themselves to feed themselves. They worked for the Egyptians, for the slave masters. They worked for them. I think God took them that 40 years in the wilderness to get the slave mentality out of them because they were comfortable being a slave. Now, I say all that to say that sometimes we get comfortable to the things that enslave us. Okay, I won't put that on you. I get comfortable to the things that enslave me. Maybe it's a poverty mentality. Maybe it is, I don't know. I'm trying to think of something without being I don't want to tell you too much, right? You don't want to know too much. But we get comfortable with things and we think we have peace with it because we justify it in our head. See, they could justify going back to Egypt, but they couldn't justify going to the promised land because they couldn't see it. They couldn't imagine it. Their imagination had gone away in Egypt. They couldn't even imagine what freedom felt like. And then when they began to experience it and they began to see the struggles and the cost, then they were like, we could have stayed where we were comfortable. It was much better back there. Why did you bring us out? Why did you bring us out here? Right? We always want somebody to blame. We'll talk about that later this week too. And so my question to you is, are you comfortable or do you have peace? That's two very different things. Two very different things. We look at Paul and Silas in the prison. That's a good example, right? Acts, I think, is about 16. They're put in prison for preaching the gospel, for setting people free, for bringing that freedom. How dare you set people free from their demons and their idolatries and things like that? How dare you? You're affecting our bottom dollar now. Now you got to go to jail because you're affecting our bottom dollar. That's really what it came down to. And they put them in jail. They were not comfortable in jail, but they were at peace. And what did they do? They praised God. When we're at peace, we will naturally step into praising God, thanking God. Thank God for this struggle. Thank God for this victory. Thank God. And we'll follow him. The children of Israel were not at peace. And they weren't comfortable either. So they wreaked havoc on poor Moses for all those years and Joshua after him. They gave him a rough time too because they weren't at peace because they weren't comfortable. Comfortable isn't the same thing. Paul and Silas, they're in the jail. They were not comfortable. They were physically, they were not comfortable because they were in stocks and bonds and they had been beaten. They had to have been in pain. And yet what did they do? They sang praises to God. And every person in the prison listened like a wow. But better than that, God listened and he set them free from that prison. He brought them out. But he didn't just bring Paul and Silas out. He made sure the centurion got saved and his whole family got baptized overnight. And a whole family was changed because they refused to be comfortable, but they accepted that peace and they began to sing and pray. See, when we have peace with God, then we're going to be comfortable praying. When we have peace with God, our circumstances don't dictate our emotions. Our circumstances don't dictate how we feel about God or those he's placed in our lives, pastors, friends, teachers, things like, that's going to lead us to him. Then we have peace with God. Even if we're uncomfortable, we still have peace with God. But if we try to get comfortable sometimes, we can interrupt our acceptance of that peace with God. We have peace with God. Jesus made peace through the cross. We have peace. We just don't always experience all the benefits because we choose to be comfortable in our circumstances instead of going after him, making ourselves uncomfortable and pursuing him and finding that peace that he has. So my question today is, are you comfortable or are you at peace with God and yourself? It's a big question. And I can't answer that for anybody. I'm just realizing that I've sat back on my laurels a little bit and chosen a comfortable path. And now I'm ready to choose something that's uncomfortable, but it gives total peace with God. And I can wake up in the morning going, oh, what are we going to tackle today? What are we going to do today? This is so exciting to just trust God, to not know and still trust God. And this Bible is full of stories of people who chose to be uncomfortable, Daniel chose prayer rather than what would have been easy. The 3 Hebrew children chose to go in the fiery furnace rather than what would have made them comfortable. And they had peace with God. Moses even chose to go back to face Pharaoh and get the children of Israel. That was not necessarily comfortable, but he had peace with God. So are we choosing what's comfortable? Or are we choosing what gives us peace with God? That's a big question, and it's one only you can answer. But in the process of answering that question, I hope you find the place to be uncomfortable and peace out. Just trust God. That's the only way to peace out. Peace out, you guys. Have a great day. I'll see you again tomorrow.